Welcome back to Coast Vue. I really enjoyed that conversation with Fofo. At times there can be so many objectives that you're working on at any given moment as a mayor, and his dedication to that job is just something to enjoy watching. Look forward to having him on the show. He's always pretty honest and frank about things, and I like having those kind of conversations with people. So now let's shift gears and move over to my friend Bill Lavers, who's the executive director for the Harrison County Development Commission. And I want to find out what the latest at the Development Commission is these days, but we're also going to talk a little bit more about the flood insurance issue. I've done about probably 3 or 4 shows now focused on the new flood insurance rating system that's coming out that actually started with new homeowners last October, and then on April the 1st, as people start to renew their insurance policies, their flood insurance policies, they'll start getting their new rates. And there's some really, really dire predictions for coastal Mississippi as it relates to where those rates are headed. And we'll come back to that in just a second. But first, let me welcome Bill to Coast Vue and say, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Good. Sun's out, 70 degrees. Lovely coastal Mississippi day. I hope folks are listening in Chicago and are jealous. So we're good.
And then we get another cold blast this weekend. I kind of like this time of year, man. It's nice to have a little bit of cold weather with the fire and so on. And it's good to get a reminder, too, of we're not in Chicago, that we are here, and our little tropical, environment's going to come back in between the cold fronts. And that's pretty cool. That is very cool. So how's things going in your world these days, Bill?
Just, same old, not enough time in the day. One of the updates is Metadine. Mark has 2 interns. He has Colton, and I can't remember the other guy's name that's over there. And he's also reaching out to find some more forgotten. It's like people with disabilities. He's trying to hire some of those folks.
Yeah.
So Mark's just one of those. He's one of those customers we really appreciate having for his mindset and the things that he's doing. He's gotten another big contract, so he needs more help. And there's a lot going on. I mean, we're a finalist. We're one of 3 states in the United States that's a finalist for this super cool project that we hope we end up being. We were first to go, so I told the site consultant we're going to stay in first place until you tell us we're not. So she laughed, thought that was good, but I'm dead serious. So it's a lot happening. We got one of my new. We have code names for projects. Normally we have like 2 or 3. We've got 11 right now. We just added Project Blast, which you can kind of figure out what that one is. They came in last week, and we're looking at some cool stuff with the port to export some product down into Central America. So it's just a lot of cool stuff happening. Railroads rolling. Not enough time in the day.
So, just to remind people, you guys have, you manage industrial parks across Harrison County. You're in the utility business as well. You've got a lot to say grace over, but there's probably nothing more important than the economic development work that you're doing. And, there's a lot of strategic advantages to locating. Let's just talk about Harrison County specifically because you've got the industrial seaway, and that's actually we've had terrific conversations about it in the past, but our forefathers, man, they had serious vision when they created that industrial canal and made it so that the industrial park there could have access to deep water. That's a big deal, isn't it?
Well, the reason I'm in the office that I'm in is we have a customer that they're here, but they want to relocate, on the seaway to bring in their bulk materials because there's a competitive advantage both in buying it in bulk and also with the transportation bottlenecks right now with truck drivers and stuff. It's a better way for them to get their product. They're going to double their staff, double their investment in the community, and they're doing that because they know what's on the horizon for their business in Harrison County. And they're a 2-state operator in the business that they're in, but they're really, really excited about the potential here. And going back to the railroad for a second, the railroad was built for Plant Watson to be built, and then it served the other customers along that way. But the big project I mentioned earlier, if we didn't have rail and hadn't put it back in service, we wouldn't be one of those 3 finalists in the United States for that project. So,
wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. That's, Fofo and I just talked about the Pops Ferry Road Bridge. And to me, that's such a frustrating conversation, because here is this bridge that, okay, so you have federal bridges, and of course you have state priorities. And then, unfortunately, since this is not a state or federal bridge, it falls on the city of Biloxi to have to deal with it. And the toll is obviously one of the possibilities as it relates to that. But the reality is that the drawbridge needs to be fixed. It's a major problem. But it serves you and I talked about it before, but it serves the industrial canal for Harrison County and economic development, and which is one of the reasons why it's going to require it to be 95-foot span once it does get built, and to eliminate the drawbridge. But the onus of that falls on the city of Biloxi to figure that out. And if you look at comments, and he and I talked about this, there's not a lot of support for a toll bridge. I wish we could find another way, but it doesn't seem that there are going to be buckets of money for, once all the other priorities are dealt with, there's going to be any money left for city projects like that bridge.
Well,
Have you been giving much thought to it?
Well, even, just jumping completely to the other side of the county, nothing against Fofo or Biloxi, but, the county's having to put in $15 million for the interchange for Buc-ees with no support from MDOT or DOT federal, and all the money from Washington is supposed to be for infrastructure, but there's no money for that project. So
yeah.
Empathize. And there's another example. There's a $15 million improvement that has to be made at the local level that supports the whole state,
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance, and then we're Mississippi. We're fighting against Texas and Florida and Tennessee and everybody else that's competing for those same federal funds as well. So it's
you and I talked about Buc-ees before, and no matter who I talk to in Harrison County government, that's a real highlight that's a big headline for us to get that project. Remind people what that project's about and why it's important.
It's it'll be the only store in Mississippi, at least for a while. They'll probably put one up in North Mississippi eventually, but they're not going to put one in Louisiana. It's to take some pressure off the Alabama store, because if anybody's gone through there, they know how busy it is. It's it's actually a $64 million investment that'll generate about $50 million a year in tax revenue. So their request was, we know from the other places we've gone, like Foley, we've got to have an interchange that will support the traffic, because there'll be 5 million people a year that hit that parking lot that otherwise wouldn't. So that's where the interchange, that was their request. That was their incentive that they wanted. And we went up to the Capitol and did legislation to create a TIF district, but there's not going to be enough money based on future revenue for that. So the county, the Board of Supervisors, in order to make that happen, they stepped up, because they had to make a forward commitment in order to get Buc-ees to purchase the property. And they stepped up and said, yeah, we will do that. So now we got to work on bonds, and Marlon Ladner and some of the other supervisors have, we're trying to find out who our friends are with their checkbooks, and we haven't found any friends yet, but we haven't stopped trying. But it's just, that project is not much different than Fofo's project in Biloxi. There's a huge economic impact to fixing that dilapidated infrastructure. Washington's talking about infrastructure all the time, but yet there's no money allocated to do local projects like that. So
yeah, it's really, hey, for people who have not been to a Buc-ees before, remind them what that is.
It's a 87,000 square foot. It's basically an old version of a Walmart with 126 gas pumps and 130 of the cleanest restrooms you've ever seen, about 78 types of beef jerky, beaver nuggets, and the best pulled pork and brisket sandwiches. That's what everybody seems to talk about. So it's really people plan their road trips as to where the Buc-ees is so they can stop, and it's basically a big tourist attraction, but it's if you've been to, everybody that's been to one gets it. The other day I was giving a speech in Long Beach to some high school kids. They were in from several counties, just kind of doing some job talking, and I was one of the speakers, and they all started kind of lulling off a little bit. And I said, hey, did anybody know about Buc-ees? And they all woke up, and I had some stickers and threw them out in the crowd. And then all those kids for the rest of that morning were like, are they going to bring the pork sandwiches? Are they bringing brisket? Are they doing that? Yes, they're bringing all that. So it's a unique experience. And for those of you haven't gotten, you can go 90 miles to Alabama. Not that I want you to do that, and visit the store over there just to get an idea of what's coming here. So we're really excited to have them coming to Mississippi. They're great people. It's two guys that own it. It's not a big corporate deal. And they're just great to work with. It's just a lot of paperwork when you're talking about taking a 2-lane bridge over the interstate to 5 lanes and extending all the access roads in every direction and widen them to anticipate 5 million people hitting that intersection that aren't hitting it today. Today, the traffic counts at that intersection, this is at Kill DeLille and I-10, the traffic counts there are already higher than they are over on Highway 53 in Foley, where the water park is. So that's before Buc-ees comes.
So let's do this. We'll finish the point on Buc-ees, and we'll talk about if you've got flood insurance and you haven't gotten this on your radar screen, you better pay attention to what we're about to talk about. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Coast Vue. We have Bill Lavers with us. He's the executive director for the Harrison County Development Commission. They have multiple hats they wear. One of the most important, of course, is economic development. When we went to break, we were kind of getting an update on all the interchange changes and access changes and the costs associated with that to accommodate Buc-ees, a big-time client that they landed that's going to be over $50 million in annual tax revenue for the county, which is going to be terrific. Anything else you want to say about that before we shift gears to the flood insurance issue?
Just, be patient. I'm not good at that, but it's going to be a couple of years before you can walk in the store and buy beaver nuggets. And before we go to flood, I said earlier, we normally have 2 or 3 projects. Right now we're working on about 11 or 12 projects, and the total investment in those is over $1 billion. So
yeah, that's awesome.
These are great times for our community and our county, and we're fighting to land every one of them.
Okay, in a nutshell, and I did a complete review of this. You can go to Coast Vue and do a search on just flood insurance, and you'll get the complete review of this. But essentially, what has happened is FEMA, because of all the losses they had to deal with over a number of years, has finally, almost I would say unilaterally, decided that they're going to create a flood insurance program that is what they call actuarially sound. In other words, that the premiums that come in pay for what is going out. And they've really completely reconfigured the way that they determine risk. And but what's interesting about the approach is it's already going into effect for new policy owners starting on October the 1st, and it goes into effect for existing policyholders starting on April the 1st. They're not being very disclosing about the methodology that they're using. And I'll give you my example. We've reached out to our agent, and they can't give us what our rate is going to be. They can't, and we also want to know how that rate, once they give it to us, how it was figured. And they have these different criteria. It's not just elevation anymore. In fact, they're not looking at that primarily anymore. They're looking at distance to water and some other pieces to this. What's going to happen is they're going to decide what your target rate is going to be. Now, look, by the way, that target rate could change. It could go higher every year. So it's possible that the target rate could be a changing target over multiple years. But let's just say you pay $500 now, you might pay $4,000 in the newest arrangement. And the way it's going to work is they're going to go up 18% a year until they reach that target number. So the cumulative effect of 18% increases every year, it will pretty quickly get you to a number that you're not going to like. For business owners, it's 25% a year. So they're trying to get to the target number with business owners as quickly as possible. But if you sell your house and you're moving it to another policyholder, when that policyholder comes in, they immediately start paying the target rate. So if you're selling your house and you have a flood insurance program and you don't know what the flood insurance issues are, or you're thinking about buying a house that's in a flood scenario, You better be asking the right questions around this. And as the problem is that until it hits people in the face, they don't really understand it and don't know that it's coming. But this is really this kind of silent giant about to attack coastal Mississippi. And there's a lot of energy around it. And the other thing I want to say is that if you rebuilt your home after Katrina because you had less than 50% damage and you got grandfathered in the program, well, they eliminate the grandfather. You're going to be paying full rate from this point forward. It's not good. You've been involved, Bill, in a lot of efforts with coastal communities to bring a lot of attention to this. They're not talking enough about the grandfather clause, as I mentioned. But what's the status of that situation?
Well, I think what we're hearing at a high level is that, the average customer, their rate's going to go down. Well, that sounds good in a talking point, but when you get hit in the head with a 6x6 and you go from $500 to $4,000, that's not down. So, there's a lot of, I would strongly encourage, as I did last time, that you reach out to your elected officials at the federal level, the Palazzo's office and Cindy Hyde-Smith and Roger Wicker's office. Chris Vines is new, he's got a new number, so call him. He'll probably want to jump into this fight with us. Glad to have Chris back on the coast. But it's just, it's one of those things. Until it happens to you, nobody's really paying attention. And there's a call, I think, Thursday with the group that we joined out in New Orleans, because it's not just Mississippi, it's not just coastal Mississippi, it's Florida, it's Louisiana, it's Texas, it's anywhere that you're on water. And you can, it's the Delta. So they're trying to get, as you pointed out earlier, more clarification and more transparency on how these things are being formulated and the cost. I mean, my neighbor down the street, her regular insurance, not even flood insurance, went from $2,700 to $10,000, and she had to shop it around and ended up paying $4,700. But that's not even flood insurance, and she's not on the water. So there's a lot of stuff headed our way that's just, and as we talked about before, with the flood insurance, if one of these changes were made, it would be pretty dramatic. But they're changing like 4 things simultaneously. Like you said earlier, I can't remember the word you used, but it's just like almost like an edict that this is the way it's going to be, and they're selling it nationwide that the majority of the people's rates are going to go down. Well, that isn't us. That hadn't hit us, that
Yeah,
way.
they're not okay. As unilateral is the word that I use, because there's a lot they still haven't disclosed to real estate leaders, to community leaders, to business leaders, to insurance leaders. There's a lot we still don't know about this. We can't understand what the target rate impact is going to be to coastal Mississippi. Nobody can give you that number. It goes on and on and on. But the reality is that in 99% of the U.S. counties, between the period 1996 and 2019, at least one flood event happened. So it's not just a coastal deal, but the way they're selling it, they're using this sort of global statement that you just mentioned, that so many people, their cost of insurance will go down, and that may be true. But if you live in a coastal community, you're about to get absolutely nailed. And coastal Mississippi in particular, because our situation because of Katrina and the very high ABFE requirement, what that base floor elevation has to be as a result of the new flood maps, put us in a much more dire situation from a cost point of view, and it is not good. And Bill, I still am amazed how little I hear talk about this, and it's coming in a big way.
Well, I was meeting with Mayor Rafferty the other day about development in the past, and I guess I'd never really thought about it like he does, but the pass is surrounded on 3 sides by water.
Yeah.
So, this is going to be an impedance to development, commercial and residential, moving forward because of the affordability of it. And if you've got a house and all of a sudden your insurance goes to $20,000 a year and you can't pay it, then you're in default. Your lender's going to start charging you, then you're going to get foreclosed on. And if you're a business and you got to pay a 25% increase, guess what? All our hamburgers and hot dogs, if we're eating it out on the deck.
Well, I've heard a few people who sort of gotten a little bit of a hint of how it might impact them. They said, well, I just won't have flood insurance. Well, If you own your home outright, maybe that's a choice you have, but most people don't own their homes outright. They have mortgages, and mortgages require you to have flood insurance. So it's not a choice that most, I would say 99% of the people don't have that choice. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah, and it's going to work like your escrow account. So if you're required to have flood insurance and then your lender puts the flood insurance on there for you and you don't make those payments and you get in arrears because you didn't make your flood insurance payments, now you're in the foreclosure bucket. So so
what's happened is the leadership focused on this today is mostly focused on disclosing sort of what's the formulas behind all this so that we can have more transparency in that. And then also just trying to slow down the increases in the rates. But to me, that's not enough. What I think we should be working on is a moratorium until everyone can get their head around this. As I've said often, that Congress has so much noise these days, the thought that they can't focus on anything really important these days. They certainly don't have the time to get this one in their head, but they need to. The Congress really does need to enter into this discussion and debate and slow this down.
And people like Shorty Sneed and Frank Bordeaux have been talking about this, not since October. They've been talking about it for decades, and nobody. Yes. Back to what you said about the noise and what they really need to do. And I think Frank mentioned this not only on your show, but he was at the Gulf Coast Business Council talking about it a couple of weeks ago. They need to create a fund that is sustainable, not what they're proposing in this actuarial, he can say it better than I can, but we got to have a better plan than what they're proposing. And for all these things to be happening simultaneously now with all the other, gas going crazy and bacon. I paid $17 for a normal package of bacon the other day.
Right.
It was good bacon, but it wasn't that good. It's just great.
So if anything changes in your coalition efforts, please let me know. Yep. Unfortunately, we've got to go today, but we'll stay in touch with you, Bill. I appreciate the update.
And thanks for keeping this on everybody's radar, Ricky.
You bet. Have a great day. We'll see you later.